I'm joined live now by Michael Lynk, Professor Emeritus of the Faculty of Law at Western University and the former United Nations Special Rapporteur for Human Rights in the occupied Palestinian territory between 2016 and 2022. Thank you for joining us, sir.
My pleasure. Thank you for asking me.
It's a horrific situation in Israel and in the Gaza Strip. So much suffering, so many innocent civilian lives lost. What was running through your mind as you watched the horrific pictures over the weekend?
Well, my immediate response was feeling gutted. There are many different ways through law, through politics, through diplomacy to try to finally resolve the many issues between Israel and Palestine. We've learned to our bitter lesson that violence and more violence doesn't lead us any closer to trying to find a resolution towards a compassionate peace, but only drives us further away. And this is particularly so with the massive loss of life by and murder of Israeli citizens that occurred on Saturday and Sunday, and now the unfolding catastrophe in Gaza, where a very densely populated city of almost 1 million is being shelled heavily, and hundreds, if not thousands, of Palestinian citizens are dying as well. If ever there was a need for Europe and North America to stand up as the adults in this room and to push for an end of this violence and to find a credible path forward to bring peace and justice in the Middle East, this is now. I don't see it happening.
Does that mean that you think that all chances of a two-state solution are off the table at this point?
Well, I don't see that. I haven't seen that for some time, and I don't see that in the foreseeable future. We have a government in Israel, which is whose strategic goal is the annexation of most, if not all, of the remaining Palestinian territory, such that there would be one unequal state between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea. There has been no credible, even indirect negotiations going on for the past 9 years. There hasn't been face-to-face negotiations for the past 23 years. There is ample international law and ample UN resolutions that would guide us to a kind of peace, either a two-state solution or a genuine one-state solution where equal rights for all could be on the table. But no one is pushing the parties, and particularly Israel, who has the upper hand as the occupying power, towards that direction. So until we have international law, until there is also international resolve to put international law into effect, I'm afraid the scenes we're seeing this week, and probably for the weeks to come, is going to only be repeated in the years ahead of us.
You mentioned that you'd like to see the U.S. and other Western leaders act like the grown-ups in the room. What do you make of the international community's response to these horrific killings?
Well, look, I understand the immediate sentiment. Certainly the slaughter that we saw on Saturday of innocent Israeli civilians would make anybody's blood rise with respect to this. What is often forgotten in the process is the fact that the Palestinians have been suffering just as much, if not more. None of that justifies what happened on Saturday, I want to hasten to add. But the living conditions and the threats to human rights, to human security that the Palestinians have faced in the West Bank, in East Jerusalem, and particularly in Gaza over the last 56 years, also wind up needing to be addressed as legitimate grievances. This has been recognized in countless UN resolutions, but until there is leadership, particularly coming from Europe and North America, that would wind up bringing the parties together on the principles and the guardrails of international law, I don't see this happening, and I'm afraid that the kind of scenes of devastation we've seen in southern Israel and now in Gaza are only going to be repeated in the weeks to come. This has every potential for being a very long assault on Gaza.
And we're not getting a lot of information out of Gaza right now. What we do know is that many Palestinians are struggling to find safety. They don't have access to power. They don't even have access to hospitals, many of them. What are you hearing from the ground?
Well, I follow the very detailed reports coming out daily from the Humanitarian Office of the United Nations in Jerusalem, who have many eyes on the ground in Gaza. They're saying that Gaza is now in total darkness as all power has been cut off, water has been cut off, no food is entering into Gaza. Humanitarian aid in the form of medical equipment or medical supplies is not entering either. I have to hasten that this is a violation of international law. The Fourth Geneva Convention is very clear that a military power cannot use starvation or the deprivations of the daily necessities of civilian life towards civilians, even at the height of a conflict. And this precedes the 16 years of a blockade, an absolute blockade of air, sea, and land by both Egypt and Israel on the Gaza Strip. Keep this in mind. There are more than 2.3 million Palestinians in Gaza. They are enclosed entirely by a fence. They can neither leave or enter without the permission of Israel. There is no other situation that's comparable in the modern world to the situation now facing Gazans. The former Prime Minister of Britain, David Cameron, rightly described this as an open-air prison. And it bespeaks, I guess, poorly of the human conscience that we can allow this to continue year after year and decade after decade.
Michael Lynk, Professor Emeritus of the Faculty of Law at Western University and the former United Nations Special Rapporteur for Human Rights in the occupied Palestinian territory between 2016 and 2022. I want to thank you for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for asking me.